there has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 200. Vegan obstacles are the way. Episode 200. That's kind of a mind blower here at Team Veg Your Best. And right up until the last minute, my Veg Your Bestie, I have been thinking that there should be something special planned here for episode 200. And, well, at least for right now, what seems special to me is that the episodes just keep coming, that they just keep going out regularly, and that we keep creating a space where we can all think regularly about how to start or restart or re-energize our lives wherever we are. And what actually makes episode 200 any different than 199 or next week at episode 201? And I thought, nothing really. The important episode was probably episode 1. Episode 1, the first step when I did not know how it would all go. I had no idea what would work, what wouldn't, and all the obstacles, big and small, that would show up along the road to 200. So, today I thought it might help you a little bit to know on this occasion of 200 consecutive weekly episodes, and I say that the way in Pirates of the Caribbean Jack always insists, Captain Jack Sparrow. I thought it might help you to know why I do this work. Because when I was certified as a life coach 6+ years ago now, I was working with people on a number of issues, and they included finances and business and family relationships. And I was encouraged to pick a specific niche, a specific demographic that I wanted to work with. And I knew that I wanted to work with vegans and with people moving in that direction. And I won't even try to estimate how many, but loads of people said, that's not a good idea. That is such a tiny number of people. And I remember I said, well, but I really want to work with midlife and older folks who might want to move in a vegan direction, which I guess would even be a tinier number. And loads of people said, well-meaning, intelligent, experienced people said, well, why would they even need a coach? You either go vegan or you don't. And loads of vegan folks gave me the feedback, well, why are you encouraging folks to just kind of go vegan-ish or mostly plant-based? Because that's not sufficient. And I have to say that the fact that so many people, vegans and non-vegans, did not get why I would ever choose this area to be my specialty, well, that sort of clinched it for me. And I'm not saying that that's how you should make important decisions in your life, but I do think that moving in a vegan direction is so important and has so many important ramifications downstream that I'm just not okay with the idea that anyone who would like to opt out of the industrial, animal, agricultural system, I don't want anyone to dismiss that idea because they think they can't do it 100%. Because almost no one goes 100% vegan without having moved in that direction 40%, 60%, 80% vegan or plant-based first. And I know, of course, we've all heard of people who go vegetarian or vegan or plant-based overnight. It happens. And I would like to tell you that if that makes you feel bad about yourself, or if knowing people who have just completely changed in any other way in their lives, if knowing that makes you wonder what's wrong with you, or think that you don't have the same capabilities or discipline or willpower, I want you to stop right there. Because, well, for example, when I made the commitment to be vegan, I had not dialed in what I was going to do about leather and wool yet, things that were already in my home and in my life. But I had been excusitarian for quite a while, meaning almost vegan, unless I had what seemed like a good excuse. So when I mentally finally made that commitment, it might have seemed to others that it was more or less overnight. But I was already almost there. So that's something I really think we need to remember. Whether we're feeling like there's no way I could ever be vegan, I could never be whole food, plant-based, or if we're thinking with some impatience about someone else who is not committing or, in our humble opinion, not trying very hard to move in a vegan direction. Because it's important to remember we're not all starting in the same place. We aren't. We just aren't. And if you wouldn't expect it with so many other challenges, right? If someone was going to run a marathon, you would not expect that someone who has never exercised regularly would have the same training plan to make that goal happen as someone who is fit and active or someone who's already running 5Ks and half marathons. We are just not all starting in the same place. There are both structural and personal barriers that are simply bigger obstacles in the way for some of us. Now, what are some of those barriers? There are economic barriers. There is a reality financially, and there's also a perception that plant-based foods are more expensive than animal-based products. And that can deter them from making the switch, or it can deter them from believing that it would be possible to be affordable. Accessibility, availability. There are, in some areas, especially food deserts in the United States, there are limited options. There's a lack of availability of fresh, whole plant-based foods. That would make it more challenging for people in these situations to access the necessary ingredients for a healthful, thoughtful, plant-based diet. There are issues also of convenience because plant-based options are often less convenient in many communities. And especially if a family is running in all directions, it may be daunting. How will we figure this out? There are cultural and social barriers, which I find to be, among my clients, some of the most challenging. There are dietary habits that are deeply rooted in our cultural and our family and our religious practices. So shifting to a plant-based diet can be seen as a departure and can be met with resistance from other people and also with the little voice in our head very often. And often also a social stigma associated with what does a vegan mean in certain political environments, in certain communities that are heavy in hunting or farming, where it's seen as disrespectful to the community. There are also educational barriers. There's a lack of information. Many people lack the awareness that plant-based diets can be extremely, if not more healthful than a standard American diet, And then there is the lack of understanding about what the nutritional needs will be. It can seem very daunting if you're someone who's basically been told that a diet rich in animal products is creating a protein that you're going to need to develop and grow and be strong and feel confident. Now, also, if you are currently under a doctor's care or someone in your family is under a doctor's care, maybe taking medications on a daily basis, certain ways of eating may actually be contraindicated or at least more complicated. And so that can be a full barrier, even to someone who's really focused on how they would like to move away from animal products. Now, systemic and policy issues for sure. Food policies, at least in the United States, subsidies often favor animal agriculture over plant-based agriculture. And the plant-based agriculture that is subsidized is virtually always for the consumption of livestock. So that is another barrier on a larger, more macro scale. But because it exists, there is, for many people, the assumption that that's a good thing, that that's what we need, that that's what we want. And of course, there's representation and inclusivity. The plant-based movement often seems to be centered around higher socioeconomic communities and more privileged people, and it can sometimes be guilty of leaving marginalized groups out of the conversation. And this lack of representation can for sure make plant-based eating seem more inaccessible or even irrelevant to certain communities. Of course, there's also psychological barriers, things like food. I think it's actually a term, neophobia. Neophobia, new, fear of the new, fear of trying new foods. That can be daunting for many people who have aversions to certain textures and styles of eating, or who are just very comfortable eating in a certain way. Food neophobia can prevent people from feeling comfortable about experimenting with plant-based options or with new foods. And then cravings and temptations. Well, that's a psychological barrier. Strong cravings for familiar animal-based foods can be intrusive and make it difficult, especially in the beginning, to stick to a plant-based diet. There are also perceptions about the time and effort involved in preparing whole food plant-based meals or investigating where you can find a vegan-friendly substitute. And this can feel like a significant barrier for people with limited time and energy. And energy is for sure one of the obstacles. That perceived extra effort required to plan or shop for or learn or research, that can deter people from making the switch, or at least even seem like a very reasonable excuse to punt that decision, to put it off until a time when your energy is more your own, when maybe kids are home or kids are back in school, or when the spouse has changed jobs, or when you've moved. The idea of someday, maybe I'll have more time to think about it. So if one or all of those structural and personal issues is particularly acute in your life, it will, of course, and one of them is probably without question more acute in your life right now, but it will probably be that much harder to make a big change, to make a big commitment when those things are going on. And yes, you may truly believe that limiting or eliminating the consumption of animals and their parts is what you want, and that it's ethically the side you want to be on, and better for our planet and for the health of our families and communities. But if you're someone with very little support, if you're already overwhelmed by the day-to-day, if you don't currently eat or actually don't even like greens, beans, grains, veggies, fruits, nuts, and seeds, it's not that you don't have discipline. It's not that you don't have the resolve or the willpower to go vegan. You're probably just not ready. even if you just kind of force yourself, most times it will not be sustainable unless you have addressed some of these obstacles, both the real and the perceived. Because the obstacles, the ones we talked about above, that whole list, it's not going to disappear. But when you know exactly which obstacle or obstacles are in the way for you, you can actually make a plan that takes them into account and begins to neutralize them. A strategy that begins to cut them down to a manageable size. So you can stop thinking that you're just not suited to a plant-based diet. And you can stop believing that you're a carnivore at heart because you're not, or that it's just not a thing that's possible in your community or religion or culture. No, we don't live in a super vegan-friendly world, though it's getting a little better. And we all have a lot that we are already dealing with. So the obstacles do exist, and they also reveal what your path is. Just like a roadmap. The obstacles on the map are the mountain, the river, the congested urban traffic. They don't just disappear. And you also just don't stay home in one place forever. The obstacles become objects of thought and curiosity and focus, and then workarounds appear. And the strategies start to become clearer or even obvious. Collaborations and partnerships develop. Communication strategies, solutions will start to present themselves to a mind that is open and creative and knows what the obstacle is in the way. And maybe 1 or 2 or 6 of those obstacles will stand in the way for a while, or maybe even forever, because there's no way to be a perfect vegan. But I do want all of us to focus on what it is we can do. I want us to focus on what we can do a whole lot more than on what we can't. So that is why I developed Veg Your Best back in 2019 and then started this podcast in 2020 because I wanted to make sure that there was help for people who thought that it was impossible for them to go vegan, that it was too hard, too late, and that it wouldn't really matter. And honestly, it's been a great ride. And I have met some of the most fantastic people in this community. And I am so grateful that I did not allow anyone to talk me out of this. Well-meaning skeptics, you know who you are. I want to thank you to all of you who have found us recently. And for those of you who have been supports and cheerleaders right since the beginning, you have no idea how sustaining your messages and reviews and comments have been. And to Nancy and Charlie, I am not sure how any of this would have happened without you. You two are an example of what the poet Rumi said, when you start to walk on the way appears. So that's exactly what we do here at Veg Your Best. It's what I was hoping we would be able to do as a community and in my coaching sessions. In these situations, we're able to look for where we can step forward now so that the road can have a chance to rise up and meet us. My Veg Your Bestie, whatever part of your life is bringing you obstacles right now, at Veg Your Best, we do it all the same way. Those obstacles, often we want to put them out of our head or just dismiss them as inevitabilities, impossible to get around. But the greatest, is it Edmund Burke that says it? The greatest of all mistakes is to do nothing because you can only do a little bit right now. So, on behalf of Team Veg Your Best and 200 consecutive weekly episodes, please get out there this week, kids, and veg your best.
Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.